Hello, everyone. My name is Sherry Nickerson, and I'm a director here at Old Line Government Affairs, and we welcome you to another edition of Online with Old Line. For this edition, we're excited to introduce Delegate Emily Shetty, representing District 18 in Montgomery County. Welcome, Delegate Shetty, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So for a little bit of background, Delegate Shetty was raised in Fairfax, Virginia, has a law degree from Catholic University, worked for a member of Congress from New York for a time, and then served as Director of Legislative Affairs for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society before becoming a member of the Maryland House of Delegates in 2019. She currently serves as Deputy Majority Whip and sits on the House Judiciary Committee. So let's go ahead and get started. Delegate Shetty, to get us rolling, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the district that you represent?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me today. It's such an honor to be here with you. So I live in Kensington, Maryland, in sort of like the southern part of Montgomery County. My district borders Washington, D.C. It includes Chevy Chase, Garrett Park, Kensington, Wheaton, and a bit of Silver Spring near the Forest Glen Metro. So it's a pretty diverse community economically as well as ethnically. We have a large immigrant population. We have several Supreme Court justices. We have Chief Judge Barbera lives in my district. We have a really wonderful constituent base, and I'm very honored to represent it. So I'm in my first term, plan to run for re-election next year. I, as you mentioned, I was born in Fairfax, but grew up in North Carolina. I went to Duke for undergrad. I like to keep that under wraps in Maryland, you know. But I majored in math and got a certificate in markets and management, which is Duke's equivalent of like business, an undergraduate business degree, and then came to DC for law school. I met my husband when I was in my law program in my last year. We got married a year later and moved to Montgomery County. So kind of really typical get married, move to the burbs story, but got pretty involved in the community pretty quickly and just love living here. Really honored to represent the district. And I focus a lot of my legislative policies broadly speaking on like helping vulnerable communities. So I've worked on a lot of like healthcare legislation. I've worked on a lot of legislation within the Judiciary Committee that focuses on elder abuse or child abuse or protecting the LGBT community. And then I just have a very active district. So they sort of demand us to be very engaged on a broad array of issues. And I'm really excited about that. So to meet that challenge, I also have like random environmental bills that I worked on around composting and other things like that. So it's been a super fun first couple of years and really honored to serve.
Sounds like you have a really diverse background. Interesting that you have a degree in mathematics. Did you always want to go to law school or?
I did. I always wanted to go to law school. I always sort of viewed law as a way to help people. You know, I was always really good at math. My mom is Bulgarian and we just kind of all like we're really good at math growing up. And then like when I was in high school, actually, I spent one summer teaching myself pre-calculus, and then I placed out of, but they only gave me like 2 weeks notice that they were going to allow me to do it. So in 2 weeks, I taught myself pre-calc and then took an exam, took the final, and then placed out of the class, and then got to do calculus. But then there were no more advanced classes after that. So I had to sit by myself and teach myself the second level of calculus, which wasn't even offered in my school, just so I could take that AP exam at the end of the year. But it was, it was kind of a weird high school experience that I got to have.
Yes, so no good deed goes unpunished, huh?
Yeah, well, I think that my math teacher at the time probably felt that way. She spent her planning period just like staring at me studying calculus.
That's fantastic. So you've been a member of the Maryland General Assembly for 3 years. We're going on 3 years. What inspired you originally? You've kind of gone into it a little bit about helping people, and why did you run?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I get it a lot, actually. So I find this job particularly fulfilling because I like to solve problems and I like helping people. And I feel like I get to do that every day, which is really fulfilling. But I first ran for office because I felt like and I still feel that our healthcare system is deeply broken and deeply flawed. So I'm a patient with a chronic autoimmune disorder. My mom is a retired nurse. I was raised by a single mom. And when she went to school to become a nurse, I was young, but my mom immigrated here and English was not her first language. So my sister and I, young as we were like helping her get through her nursing program, and like we would help her with her homework. And so I sort of felt like I got exposed to the healthcare system at a very young age. And then, and we grew up without health insurance and, kind of understanding from that perspective what it's like for families to not have access to care when they need it, like the decisions that you have to make that you might not otherwise make, like not being able to play sports as a kid, or not being able to go to the doctor when you just happen to break your finger playing recess. Like that's really scary. And so I just that really shaped my childhood, and it shaped the direction that I took my my policy work after working on the Hill too. So I'm really excited to get the opportunity to work on those issues at the state level in this capacity. And then in my separate job, like I started my own federal government affairs firm, and I work on healthcare and education policy at the federal level too. So it's been very rewarding to get to solve problems and help people every day.
That's very cool. So I know you served some time on Capitol Hill as well, not in an elected position, but as a legislative director for a congressman. How has that experience been? How did that prepare you for your time in Annapolis, and how's it been different for you?
Well, it prepared me very well, actually. So my former boss, who retired in 2012, is a social worker. And so he always viewed politics through that lens of like, we are here to help serve the community that he represents. And so every staff person, regardless of whether they were placed in DC or in the district, were responsible for doing constituent casework alongside of the policy work that we did. And it really helped ground us and helped give us really great bill ideas because we started to see the gaps in where like the policies that we were working on were not extending fully to cover the people that he served. And so, in my job as a legislator now, like we get the opportunity to do both casework and policy in tandem. And so the preparation I got on Capitol Hill was invaluable for that purpose.
Oh, I can only imagine. I too worked on Capitol Hill for a congressman for some time and did the same thing. I handled healthcare for him. You are exposed to a lot, and it's a completely different perspective than I was used to at that time.
Yeah, so it's very rewarding, right? To get that opportunity. Absolutely. And I loved working for him. I told him at the time, and I meant it, that if I like won the lottery, I'd still work for him if he'd have me, because I was like, I wouldn't be paid to work for you. I just like do it.
Right. Exactly.
But I really meant it, just because I really loved his philosophy of like the purpose of policy and politics. And I really carry it with me to this day.
It sounds like you're really passionate about what you do, and that's great. That's very refreshing. So what do you consider at this point in your very young career so far, what do you consider has been your biggest accomplishment, the thing you're most proud of?
So I'd say one thing that I'm really proud of is at the start of the pandemic, Governor Hogan signed only 2 bills from last General Assembly, and they were both telehealth bills. One of them was mine.
Oh.
And I'm really, I was like stunned and excited because it sort of, I mean, you know, I hate to, you know, pat myself on the back too much here, but I felt like a visionary.
Right, right.
Like, telehealth is awesome. Like, this is the future. This is what we need to be thinking about. We need to be removing these like arcane restrictions in Medicaid. Like the notion that a patient in Medicaid could only utilize telehealth if they were actually physically located within a physician's office is
Right.
so silly to me. Like when I found that out, I was like, oh, this is so silly. We have to take care of this. Like, and so working with Senator Hershey on that bill to remove that was very rewarding. And then that was like one of the 2 bills that he signed into law. Like, so it was, you know, it was already going to be an emergency measure, but he signed it and it became like, okay, this is a big deal now. Super proud of that.
That's a great accomplishment. Now, let me ask you, I know you're not on the healthcare committees, but did you also have a hand in some of the telehealth? Because there was huge telehealth legislation that passed this past session.
Yeah.
Ongoing.
Honestly, I wish I could have been more involved in that because I love telehealth. And I think it's like really is such an important integral part of ensuring access to care, especially now. And I think now people like really get it, right? Like I think anybody that's had a healthcare, visit, most of them have started via telehealth this past year, which is pretty exciting. But I could, because I serve on the Judiciary Committee and on the Public Safety Committee in particular, we were really, really busy with police reform.
I know.
So I did not have, unfortunately, the capacity to work with my HGO friends on this year's telehealth measures, but I trust that they did a stellar job, as they always do.
They did a great job. And I have a feeling it'll be coming back again next year. I mean, we've still got, there's still more to do.
Great.
So you've talked about what you're proud of, what you've done in the past. What would you still like to, what's next on the agenda for you?
Well, it's a good question. So this year was despite the craziness of this year, I had a pretty personally successful year. So I had 6 of my 8 bills, 6 of my 9 bills passed.
Wow.
Like totally passed, both chambers. One has already been signed into law. I think we're waiting on decisions on the other 5, but I suspect that they likely will be signed because they had very strong bipartisan votes in both chambers. And then 2 of my bills passed the House but didn't quite make it through. So I might, bring those back. One is related to protecting seniors from undue influence and like the transfer of their assets. And so this idea came from a constituent. So I really want to make sure that we get it across the finish line. It strengthens part of our criminal code as it relates to undue influence. And then I had another bill related to green businesses that I will bring back that came to me by way of our local Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce, and had the support of like a number of environmental groups and others. So this is, really non-controversial, but it just sort of got caught up in the broader politics of the chamber dynamics this session. So those 2 I'll bring back. I'm starting to meet with organizations and with constituents who have ideas for next year, and building up, the portfolio then, and just sort of starting our research. But we'll see. Kind of my slate's been more or less cleared.
Sounds like it in a great way, though. I mean, congratulations on passing so many bills.
Thanks. It was a weird year, weird session, but really grateful for the support of my colleagues on these bills. So I thought I really tried to be very focused and strategic on what I brought, and just, really focus on like, okay, what can I actually possibly get done this year? So I'm glad that strategy panned out.
Sounds like it did for you. So to wrap things up, what is one unique fun fact you'd like to tell everybody about you? Something you can share about yourself?
Yeah. So my husband is Indian, And we cook a lot at home. We make really, really good food. And my mother-in-law actually taught me a lot of the recipes that I know. And like teases me sometimes. She like says I'm like part of the community now because like I can like really make those dishes. But I really love to cook. I bake really well. I do a lot of gluten-free baking because of my own like health stuff. But then I just love to cook with my 5-year-old. He is awesome. He has like this really advanced palate for a 5-year-old.
Wow, that's great.
He ate Ethiopian food with us last night. He'll eat sushi this weekend. I'm sure like he's pretty advanced. In fact, just yesterday, he was asking us whether, because we were telling him about our first visit to the hospital when I had him and how daddy went and bought sushi for mommy because mommy couldn't have it. And he said, well, did he bring any for me? I really like the kind of cream cheese. And I was like, no, sweetie, newborns don't have sushi.
That is so adorable. Well, nurture that as much as you can. I've got a son who won't eat anything but chicken nuggets. But I did spend
we're lucky. They go through phases, right? I'm sure one it won't. He'll just want chicken nuggets and hot dogs, and we'll remember this time fondly. So.
Absolutely. And I spent my entire day yesterday baking with my daughter. So we made this ridiculously bad, ugly birthday cake, and it's 6 layers, and she's had a ball doing it. Hoping it's edible. We haven't tasted it yet, but hoping it's edible. But it looks great. So
that's so fun.
So thank you so much, Delegate Shetty, for taking the time to join us today. We look forward to having more opportunities to work with you in the future. And for those of you who tune into these interviews with legislators, for more online with Old Line, please visit oldlinelobbying.com.